because today's bill is a practical session. No judgment.
Yeah.
What's an AI agent?
I would say it is, I'm going to try and not talk about it from a techie perspective, but it's a technology that has the automation built into it when you think about what AI can do. It's also very much linked into things like large language models. So it has the ability to use natural language to think through things, to access a database of knowledge, whether that database is your knowledge or the internet.
So obviously you focused in on recruitment. Am I right in thinking you've got sort of ambitions to build out? I think we've spoken about L&D, we've spoken about performance management. What's the game plan?
It certainly will be end-to-end HR at the end of the day. For me, recruitment was just the right place to start for many reasons. One, it is the hardest place to start when it comes to AI. A lot of people would think it's the easiest, but not necessarily, because that's where you've got things like bias. That's where you have to be very strict around how you create your AI to be transparent when it makes decisions, to look at itself in bias. That's where you have to make sure that you're constantly looking at the information, the database that you have, going back, the sample sizes, rechecking around bias, because AI still has its limitations and we can always talk about what those are. But it naturally felt the right place for me. Two, it's a fantastic place to understand exactly what the end game of an organization is when it comes to competitiveness.
This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache and you don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information. Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. We're living through what might be the most dramatic transformation in our lifetime, certainly in the workplace. Artificial intelligence is here, and business leaders expect really for us to change and rewire everything from how we recruit to how we train the team to how we think about performance and development. But I think it's fair to say that so many HR leaders are really struggling to make meaningful progress in getting their organizations and getting their teams to adopt AI. Our guest today is Natalie Sheils, the founder of Talenaut, a comprehensive AI-powered HR platform. Now, far from your traditional tech bro, coming into the space with little practical knowledge, what I really love about Natalie is that she spent her whole career in HR before turning her mind to building the software and the solutions to sort of govern and design our futures. So we just thought today would be an opportunity to have a practical chat about what AI means for HR, for our roles, and for our businesses at large. Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Felix. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, if you could you start with a bit of a rundown of what Talenaut does, just to give the folks out there a feel for the problem you're looking to solve?
Sounds good. Well, Talenaut is, if I were to simplify it, I'd say it's a conversational AI recruiting platform. It's a platform that allows you to, well, it's got an inbuilt AI agent, but it allows you to kind of run your end-to-end recruiting with the help of AI, but in a way that feels natural, whether for you that's written, whether it's text, or whether it's by voice, as well as for your candidates as well. It allows them to, in real time, be able to access your jobs within their phones, not necessarily from email or all of that, but just by conversating with the agent, to help them through applications, to help you through engagement, and in terms of keeping the talent that actually applies to jobs, keeping them engaged throughout with the help of AI. So never necessarily having to always relook at your talent databases and all of that, but having this real life, not only recruiting platform, but hiring assistants that's always there to help you do everything that you need without starting from scratch.
Very, very cool. Now, just take a step back, because today's bill is a practical session. No judgment.
Yeah.
What's an AI agent?
All right. So if I were to kind of simplify it this way, I would say it is, I'm going to try and not talk about it from a techie perspective, but it's a technology that has the automation built into it when you think about what AI can do. it's also very much linked into things like large language models. So it has the ability to use natural language to think through things, to access a database of knowledge, whether that database is your knowledge or the internet. It has the ability to self-learn if you create it that way. It has the ability to learn nuances and its ability to do tasks that you set for it, whether you do it from a trigger perspective or you just do it from how you've sort of organized and structured it. So it is this autonomous operator that works for you very much like a human assistant with limitations on knowledge.
That's really interesting. And am I right? Am I right in making a distinction between task-based work and I guess more like process-based work? So with an agent, they're sort of augmenting more of a process, whereas I guess Gen 1 AI was more around, I'm doing this, please help me.
Yes, exactly. So with an agent, what you're looking at is, and kind of like, I'm going to piggyback on the concept of having a process. So when you're thinking of whether it's hiring or whether it's learning and development, there's multiple tasks that go into that with an outcome based in mind. Those outcomes are always tied to your strategy or your objectives, what you want to achieve. And so when you have an agent, it's an agent that's able to do all of these tasks. But when it does those tasks, it's also looking for particular, how can I put it, particular points. Like, think of it as a race. Let's think of flags, particular points within that race to say we've reached this stage, this is the data points that I need. These are the people that I need to go back to and come back to and communicate, whether that's your learning and development, again, whether that's your employees, what is this person's strengths, what is the sort of the database of information that I need to tap into in order to reach this particular outcome, which maybe would be to upskill John when it comes to software development, for example, right? What are John's interests? What's the end game ultimately for the organization? What role does John play? So an agent's able to take all of that information and be able to help you kind of orchestrate that entire process or workflow, not just incrementally, not just task by task, but systematically.
Fantastic. That's really, really helpful. I think just a useful grounding for the audience today, just to understand what we're chatting about and why at different phases. So obviously you focused in on recruitment to start with. Am I right in thinking you've got sort of ambitions to build out? I think we've spoken about L&D, we've spoken about performance management. What's the game plan?
Well, it certainly will be end-to-end HR at the end of the day. For me, recruitment was just the right place to start for many reasons. One, it is the hardest place to start when it comes to AI. A lot of people would think it's the easiest, but not necessarily, because that's where you've got things like bias coming into play. That's where you have to be very strict around how you create your AI to be transparent when it makes decisions, to look at itself in bias. That's where you have to make sure that you're constantly looking at the information, the database that you have, going back, the sample sizes, rechecking around bias, because, AI still has its limitations and we can always talk about what those are. But it naturally felt the right place for me. Two, it's a fantastic place to understand exactly what the end game of an organization is when it comes to competitiveness. There's for me, no other function where I can understand what's an organization's objectives, what are the skill sets that it needs, who are the people we have internally, who are the people we need to hire, what's the marketplace out there, what are the trends in the place of work, and then building AI that has all of that in mind. And from there onwards, all you can do is go up.
Yeah, and what I really love about being focused in recruitment is sort of necessarily geared in the future.
It's the closest to the future than any other area of HR.
Exactly right. So I think what we found in the work we do at Instant Impact is you can have those conversations of what does our workforce need to look like in the future, in 2 years, in 18 months, which of the roles that we're recruiting for right now, actually, maybe should we not be hiring for? So it is that geared into future state. And that probably, when you're building a software for it, allows you to be a little bit more experimentational. Yeah, that's the word.
Exactly. And if you were to kind of go out and look at a lot around recruiting, many people will think it's low-hanging fruit. I think about that, I think about sort of your software developers who maybe don't have an HR background, which a lot of them don't. But it's actually it's a minefield. It's the one where you have to be really careful, because everything else that you have, when you're thinking about it from, okay, I've got AI that helps me with performance management, with learning and development. Your subset is already your employees, right? You're already dealing with factual information about people within your organization. These are the skills that Natalie has. This is Natalie's performance review. This is how you keep Natalie engaged. This is where Natalie wants to go to. This is where our department wants to go to. That's factual information. But when you're talking about a subset that you cannot even control, that is macro in size, like in recruiting, and being very strategic about the decisions that your AI is making in helping you become more productive or in selecting the right type of talent, that's like walking on a minefield.
Yeah. Quite so why start there?
And the reason for that is with Talenaut, my vision for it has always been not necessarily obviously how we help ourselves as HRs become more effective today, but how do we make sure that we future-proof our function, but at the same time providing more strategic value for our stakeholders. When I think about HR from a strategic point of view, forget what everybody else thinks around whether it's more administrative or operational. HR strategic. Ultimately, the stakeholders that we work with, whether it's CEOs or small founders, ultimately they're looking at what is the industry that they work in, what is the pressure within that industry, and technology is disrupting everything, right? What are the skill sets that we need as an organization, or how do we need to change our operating models in order for us to continue to compete? Do we need to change our business model in order for us to do that? And all these things require humans that can help the organization do that can help the organization pivot. And HR for me is that function that then can help the organization find the humans with the roles, the right type of skills to do that, or to upskill the humans within the organizations to get the people that are in there already ready, whether it's from a change management perspective, to be able to take on this dynamicism that's happening with the organizations and this shift that's happening. And recruitment for me is the place where I can do that in real time. It's a place where I can understand what is happening when it comes to market trends. If you tell me you're an organization that's in mobile development, I'll be like, okay, so these are the pressures that you're going through, this is the skill set, etc. And there's a lot of data points you can capture about an organization from then onwards, and everything else you're kind of building on top of it. And if your AI agent can be agile enough, if you can build an agent that's agile, that's the difficult part, by the way, candidly, then you're able to kind of build on that. Even from an employee's journey, that's ground zero. That's when the person comes in, and everything else you're doing, whether you're personalizing the employee experience, whether you're thinking about John. Is John a churn risk?
Come on, John.
Is he a churn risk? You already understand John from the moment John came into the organization. You knew what John's history was. You knew what John's skills were. You knew what John wanted to become, his goals, what he wanted to do. You knew what the organization was hoping to achieve with John. And so you've already got a very critical data point for the moment John comes in to then build on things like John's learning and development, to build on things like John's performance management, John's engagement.
Which is usually data that gets lost, right? All of that sort of stuff. So, I think it's already obvious speaking to you that your background in HR has been really useful in thinking through the product itself. How do you think your knowledge base as a sort of people practitioner has helped you to understand how technology is going to shape the future of the function?
Yeah. For me, it's been one exciting ride too. It's been very critical, because when I understand what the technology can do, I understand what aspects of our function it can really enhance, what part it can augment and other parts it can eradicate. Right? We can just move on and give that to AI. But also, if I recognize the capabilities of what AI technology can do, I can also think about what does the future of me as, a talent manager potentially look like in a world that's very technology based, in a world where our HR tools become more kind of technological. What am I looking for? My standard for what's possible goes up, but also understand what are the skills that's going to be necessary for me to be able to work with that technology.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How ready for that future do you think most people functions are?
No, not very ready at all. Not very ready at all. And it's not from a lack of wanting to be ready, right? It's a lack of understanding how do we use HR within our function? So, AI. A lot of the things you will hear about AI that are out there are really around the capabilities of AI from a point of view, from a product perspective, right? How this particular product now allows me to be able to put my thoughts down and be able to create a video, be able to create a picture. Okay, fantastic. How is Amazon using it when it comes to their workplaces, their storehouses, and Target, and how they're augmenting some of their stuff? Okay, great. But what does that mean for me within my job? And so it's a lack of that exposure to what it means, because our technologies are going towards that direction, yet to have that disruption. Some are already starting to. But then I think the true disruption of what is possible is going to require people with our skill set. Right. So it's going to require the Natalies, the whoever's within the HR function, the specialists, to understand how can I then take this technology and be able to customize it in a way that allows us to do what we need to as HR professionals. So having that background and now being able to recognize exactly what the technology can do, I sit and I think, right, what is the function? What is ultimately the thing that I want to achieve as a head of HR or as a recruiter? Take it down just by role, right? What am I trying to achieve? As a training manager, what am I trying to achieve? What can the technology do when it comes to that? And then what is the skill set that if it's out there and it's able to do these particular things to help me as a training manager, what are the skill sets that I need to have in order to be able to use that technology? So it's definitely played a big part in doing that. It's very exciting. It's very, very exciting in terms of what it can do, but it requires us to also move lockstep. The advantage we have, again, is that this disruption for our industry is very much reliant on the technologies that exist to serve our industry. And that disruption is not happening as quick as it could, like it does with sales, like it's doing with marketing and product.
Yeah, but I guess already we need to start thinking about if marketing and sales are getting disrupted.
Yes. The pressure is going to be on how are we going to do that, and our stakeholders are going to want to see that,
and how we support that
exactly,
that adoption and the org design pieces.
Exactly. And agents haven't made it easier either. The concept of having agentic AI has not made it easy, because there is this hubris in believing that it's something that can replace certain functions. Sure, a little bit of administration here and there, but having been so close to AI, I've got a very different kind of point of view to everybody else. It's certainly, I don't think the success rate is in it being autonomous. And I think if you leave it being autonomous, that's where you get the failure of those AI kind of projects. So we talked about agentic projects. For AI to work, it has to be a symbiotic relationship, right, between the user and the technology. And eventually it becomes that. But we've got to become kind of trained in doing that. And those who don't become trained in doing that, unfortunately, will be left behind 100%.
Yeah. And what are you expecting to see within all the sort of organizational shape? Are you expecting erosion of functions, smaller teams, or do you just think that actually the total amount that humans can consume will always outstrip what technology and production can create?
The nice thing about technology is this. Let's probably start from a point of production. The one thing that technology will do is increase the ability to produce more, which will increase GDP generally, right? When that happens, contrary to to people like Elon Musk believe, that creates more opportunity, more work. Humans, yes, there will be a time where innovation will outpace creativity, right? Which is why maybe when that happens, it might feel like there's a lot of jobs being disrupted. But if human creativity continues to be what it is, which is thinking outside the box and thinking, how do we continue to provide the best goods and services for our consumers, for our customers? Capitalism. And as long as capitalism exists, there's opportunities to be able to do more. When there's opportunities to do more, there's more work for people. So to begin with, we do start with smaller teams. With the technology that exists, of course you're going to have a smaller team, because you're not necessarily going to need to have somebody who's going to be screening all the time, looking through the resumes, which is 80% of a recruiter's job. It shouldn't be 80% of their job. The job usually spent speaking to people, but a lot of the time gets, I'm trying to say it in a very eloquent way, but the life gets drained out of the function. Screening, right? Sitting down and looking at resumes. And then you have resumes that all look the same now. Thank you, AI. Right?
Soul destroying looking through that's hundreds and hundreds.
And so how do we then become, so when AI is able to do that, so you've got AI creating more resumes, you've got AI being able to screen and show you that everyone's still the same, right? Okay, so that shifts from looking at resume and shifts to actually sitting and having one-to-one contact. I would actually stretch it more and say, sit to thinking about how do you start to screen and evaluate talent in a world of AI. It cannot be the same. It cannot be the same as what we've always done. But at the same time, how do you utilize AI to actually recognize who have the AI skills, right? Which is crucial for organizations. So the teams get smaller in that case because it becomes sort of about one-to-one. The admin stuff can be sort of automated, but you need still somebody who's going to look at that, keep an oversight over that. But depending as well as in terms of where the organizations are putting a lot of their funds and their resources, unfortunately, sometimes, scaling our organizations is not always the priority when competition comes up and the micro look around how do we compete, where should we put our resources into innovation, development, product, these kind of things, that always kind of pulls away at things like sort of the size of the organization. Same thing with sort of learning and development, where you have technologies that can do what it took, a learning and development coordinator months to do. It can just simply be done in a week or less with just a skilled coordinator and a good technology. So now you don't need 3 coordinators in order to write some courses and do all these other things.
Yeah, and they can focus on the strategic focus of what you want in L&D.
Strategic, exactly.
Getting people to actually do it.
Exactly. Or to even understand that one of the weaknesses, I'm not going to say weaknesses, one of the opportunities we've not been able to tap into as an HR function as a whole is that though you have HR leadership looking after sort of all the other functions within HR, the other function in HR I've always worked in what feels like a silo. Recruiting, doing recruiting, L&D, doing L&D, your HR BPs doing sort of the stakeholder engagement and all of that. In a world where you have AI technology to kind of automate a lot of this stuff and it becomes strategic, you start to recognize how the functions should blur into each other from a strategic point of view. So recruiting should think around talent strategy, should be thinking about workforce planning, should be thinking about succession, should be thinking about the general health of the organization, the objectives of the organization, and then should be thinking about how we get those people with those right type of skill sets lockstep with your talent team, right? So suddenly recruiting, to me, becomes part of talent, right? Talent and development. And then your HR VPs and talent development also sitting together to understand, how do we then make sure that we have the type of skills that our, stakeholders need, whether it's our store managers or whether it's our heads of products or engineering, whatnot. What are they dealing with? What are they struggling with? What are the skills that we need? the engagement of certain people that have certain skills that we need. But not only that, even when we think about how we've always thought about sort of training and upskilling people, it's always felt like the focus has always been on your high potentials and this kind of stuff. In the world of AI, everybody needs to go with the organization. Everybody needs to get skilled. And so it becomes, how do we start to do that in a world where we challenge our managers, and that becomes part of our focus, strategic focus as HRs, when we're not staying away from administration. These are the opportunities that come. How do we help them to think about how do we upskill their entire function as a whole, right? That's one thing. Secondly, as well, in the world of technology, agents become part of that workforce, right? And that's another can of worms around what that looks like for our function.
Do you think that agents will replace specific jobs and kind of sit within the org chart? Or do you think that it's more likely that you end up with teams that are sort of a hybrid of an agent that sits across everything and frees up, I don't know, an FTE, for example, but across multiple different jobs?
That would be lovely. But sitting very close to technology, no. It's complex to think you can get one agent to do multiple things. Yes, but if it's on a vertical. But when we're now talking about multiple verticals, it's a bit difficult. Then you have different agents and maybe an orchestration that happens in the middle.
Yeah, I guess. So I was really interested. It was probably towards the end of last year. Lattice rolled out an AI employee that you could put into the org chart within a team, and you can give that AI agent feedback. Well, but tasks, of course, but feedback on how it performs. So, you wrap it into your normal evaluation so that it can kind of train the model and do all the rest of it. That never really, I don't know, there's something about that didn't quite feel right to make.
You're starting, so talking about it from somebody who's building this technology, it takes time. And you have to train it very particularly on one particular function and to be able to kind of do it really, really right. And there's so many points of reference within just freaking recruiting, just to say that for one, right? And then think about having to lap up things like OKRs, the performance management process. And I'm talking about with Lattice here, engagement process, right? Which is what they will have. And expecting that one agent to be able to, if it is a true agent, be able to, not only do those tasks, do those workflows, think through, trigger the right type of people. It's very complex, no matter how much feedback you give it. But if you create multiple agents, then that's a different story, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that's exactly where they're going, and they're creating multiple agents that can sit within different teams. I mean, it's a really interesting approach, and there's certainly I do like what they're doing in terms of challenging our ways of thinking around building teams and orgs, and I guess we'll see how it all pans out.
Yeah, but to your question, do I see AI agents sitting as part of the org chart? Eventually, yes, because the pace of the advancement of this technology is quite impressive. It's quite amazing. And yes, so I do think that it does get to a point where you have some agents who are sitting where you can say, talking about it from an HR perspective, where you can say, okay, this is our HR org. This is our job application specialist who sits here, right? Which is an AI. All right. This is our recruiting assistant, which is the AI that will handle things like maybe first line screening, coordination of your interviews, feedback, engaging your database of candidates, right? That's a real job that somebody else is doing that has that title that the AI can then do, but then is overseen by your head of recruiting, which is Mike. Let's give John a break. But which is Mike, and Mike has to have the skills to recognize, how do I evaluate how our job application specialist is doing, right? Which is a technology. How do I evaluate how it's doing? How do I make sure that it's continuously learning, but at the same time that we're applying the right type of ethics? The same way you would do with an actual employee. I think we move into that world, maybe not quickly as we could, depending on what's happening with sort of, again, our technologies within our space. But we certainly will get there, and we'll get there probably much quicker in other functions.
Yeah.
There's quite a few organizations that already have that set up. And so we will get there. To think we won't is, no, we'll definitely get that.
I mean, what's amazing is that companies that are setting up now, I mean, you're setting up now, so I'm sure you've done some of this in your own org, right? You sort of, they're able to bring in AI agents from day
one, from day one,
which is, and the DNA of the organization is just so radically different.
Yeah. I mean, I have 3 AI agents that have different functions that they
Mike, John, and
I need to name them, but that do different things for me. Whereas it would have taken me a long time, or had to hire a team, but I can actually do that with the AI agents. I'd be skilled enough to be able to check in terms of what they're doing, and to be able to kind of put in the outcomes that I want to see and test and do all of that. So there's still a lot of work that goes into it, but you can literally build an organization that's thriving, probably that would have taken 100 people with far less people, when it comes to AI.
It's very cool. So let's bring it full circle then to what the function feels like in 5 years. Are you expecting then to, let's say every function will have between 1 and 5 AI agents supporting them? So in any given organization in the future, you could have 15 different AI agents and a bunch of other like non-agentic tech stack, I would imagine, as well. Are we missing then a sort of digital change, AI specialism within the people function?
Yes.
And what do you think that will look like in the future?
I think if we do it right as HR professionals, and I think we should become very AI literate as quick as we can, even with things that are traditional engineering, but things like prompt engineering, we need to understand that, because when you're working with an agent, you are feedbacking it in its language, which is prompt engineering, right? So I think that's something that's very crucial for us, because a lot of nuances can get lost, right, if you can't speak that particular language. But I think the future is, yes, we do have agents that support us. I think in my utopia, every HR professional would have an assistant that works with them, right? Which is AI.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a recruiter and you have got multiple people in your team, you guys can have that one agent that supports your entire team from, we still have recruiters, but you've got that agent that can do some of the administrative aspects of it. In time, it can help with strategy. I would argue it can help today, but again, that's a different line. Probably you want to work, you have to really know what you're doing with it. But yes, so when it comes to having agents, I think, yes, every team will have one. And I think the technologies that are out there today are making sure that happens. And I think that's going to be something that's welcomed. But I also think that ethics is a very important thing. And I think the AI function the HR function needs to think about AI ethics. And I think that becomes a crucial part within our function. I think when we talk about sort of your HR, HRS kind of coordinators or administrators or whatever that is, HR technology, I think that shifts into somebody who's very skilled in dealing with AI agents. And I think it's not, and here's the kicker, of all the functions that exist, HR is probably, outside of CEO and all that, is the only function that has to also be aware of what marketing is doing with its AI agent.
Yeah.
Its AI agent employee. What does that employee do? What does success look like for that AI agent employee? What's the product team doing with that? What is the success metrics for that? How does that then tie into the organizational objectives, the OKRs, the performance that's expected from the human, the performance that's expected from the AI? What is the return on that? Right? Is it the right type of tool we should be using? Sit down with the head of product, understand what they're trying to achieve. Is this something a human can do? Is this something AI does? And being able to say, okay, how do we start to look at performance evaluation from a human standpoint, but also from an AI standpoint? And what is the performance of a team holistically with its AI agents, with its humans? Right?
It's just another additional layer of complexity, which is what we all needed.
Yes. Yes,
It's the most consistent thing that HR people say when they come on this podcast is, Felix, I've got too much time. Everything's too easy. I just really needed a little bit more Well, I can't believe it, but I feel like that is exactly the note to finish today on. Natalie, thank you so much for joining. It's been such an interesting conversation.
Thank you very much, Felix. I'll just say one point that I think is very crucial. If we don't do that as AI, as so as HR, the conception is going to be that maybe this sits with IT.
Yeah, and they'll automate everything away.
Exactly. And not necessarily to the success of the organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a word of warning, folks. Natalie, thanks for joining.
Thank you.